This is TWiT. Rumor is now March 31st. Is that credible that Apple will have an event to announce this $400 successor to the iPhone SE? Is that about right?
Yeah, if it's an Apple, if there will be an Apple event, March 31st makes the most sense. I think they traditionally will have it the last Tuesday of the month, so that fits right into the narrative of when they would have it for sure. Yeah.
And
yeah, I agree.
Dan, how much has the coronavirus impacted that? I mean, that's probably what those factories were making.
Yeah, there's the possibility of that. I think what's likely is that since Apple already said in their guidance that they'll be constrained on the iPhone, it's likely that if they are sort of ramping this, that there will be short supply of it in the first place. There's an open question of what the demand's going to look like, though. There are certainly a lot of pent-up demand from people looking for a cheaper iPhone.
And smaller.
So I think that is a potential risk. Yeah, cheaper
Lori
and
wants smaller.
certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that is a risk because I think you'll be looking at maybe just it's going to take more, there'll be a few weeks, ship times will slip pretty quickly, and it will take a little while for them. But I don't think it necessarily will push back them announcing it. I think they want to hit that March date just for not only that, but whatever else they have in the pipeline.
Yeah.
And you can hit the launch and the pre-order and then get that first wave out like they always do, and then tell you that the next wave is going to take a month to get to you or whatever they want to do. But then they can actually judge what the market's going to be like. And you got to figure they were already pumping out these phones before this happened. They're not just making these phones a month before they announced them. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
So these phones have already probably been in production if they planned on having a March launch on them.
Right. And they're going to want to under-promise and over-deliver rather than the other way around.
Right.
That's how they do it.
Like the Z Flip.
Well, I know this phone's going to sell like hotcakes, and not just because it's cheaper, but just because I personally in the world see so many people with small phones, and it annoys me, and I ask them why, and it's just because they can't deal with a bigger phone. And I'm like, you are living in 1980 right now, and I cannot hold this thing in my hand. But they love a small phone. So I think this thing is going to sell like hotcakes for a lot of people.
It's not even that much smaller, though. I mean, it's basically going to look a lot like the iPhone 8 in terms of size, which is smaller than the 10 and the 11. But it's
not as small as the SE.
Not like, right. The SE was way smaller.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going
Dan's
back
got
there.
my back
Was
on
SE
this
4-inch?
Yeah.
What do you got? Look at the size of that. That's
Hey, Grandma.
Beautiful. Look at this thing. Look at this thing. It's so easy to hold in my hand. I love it so much.
Which model is that?
The SE.
That's the old SE. Okay.
It's so nice.
Yeah, it looks just like an iPhone 5, doesn't it? Yeah.
I'm over here working with the new iPhone. I don't know what you're talking about. That small stuff. I need something that just just dominates.
That's a
my whole
banana
hand
phone.
That's right.
That's a candy bar phone.
You don't like the new? Oh, sorry. I apologize. My mistake. Anyway,
I wish I had an iPhone 8 in front of me to show the difference between the two, because it's like, again,
bigger.
When we talk about small, I'm thinking of that 4-inch form factor. So I'm thinking that size. So when people say the iPhone 9, if you want to call it that, is the smaller phone, I'm completely in a disagreement. Dan, you are right down my pathway where this is not the small phone. This is the same size as the iPhone 8. That's not a small phone. That's a huge phone. It's like a 4.7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's way too big.
At some point, you're going to get aged out, though. You're going to have to do it.
No, and that's true. That actually my standard phone is an iPhone 11 Pro, and I've talked about this before. And Renee Ricci is actually the one that pointed out to me that size phone, the 4-inch phone, that it can't handle the processors that are now being made for these faster phones. So if you wanted a 4-inch phone, you would have to have a series chip that's 3 or 4 years old, because that size can't handle that capacity. So Apple's not going to make a phone that small anymore. They're just not going to do it. The technology that goes inside it would be too old. Nobody wants that. I don't want an iPhone SE that has technology from 5 years ago. I want an iPhone SE.
You want it to look
has
like
today's
it.
Technology.
You want it to look like 5 years ago, but work like today.
And that's not going to happen. So until
you're the Emily
technology...
Dickinson of iPhones, basically.
yeah.
So they say the rumor is that it'll be an A13, the current A model processor in this new iPhone. So they just couldn't make it small because is it heat? Or is it just the physical size of the chip?
The processor would just burn out the phone. The processor is too strong to like handle.
It's too much, man. You can't handle
the phone can't handle it, and the phone would just kind of blank out. It would just crash on you all the time because it couldn't handle
battery capacity would probably be an issue too, right? You need that extra space to fit in those higher power batteries to power not only the processor but the screen and everything else that goes in there. So there is a physical space limitation for that as well.
Yeah. My hope though is that someday the guts of phone technology will be advanced enough that we can go back to smaller phones and just have faster processors and stronger batteries that are smaller so that we can have that small phone again. That's my hope someday.
It's interesting. It's interesting too, because like there was, I think back to like the 80s and the 90s, and miniaturization was the trend for so long, right? Especially with the advent of microprocessors. And it seems like now we've moved away from that on that arc. And so eventually we have to wait to get back to the point where we can miniaturize everything once again.
We're trying to do so much. We've got multiple GPU cores in this thing. We've got, these are much more complicated chips. And then of course there's radios. Think about it. It is miniature. This is a supercomputer in my pocket.
But to be honest, they're overdoing it at some point. Like there's no R&D in reverse engineering to make things smaller now, because you're making a phone that's got 16 gigs of RAM in it. For what? Like, what are you really doing on your phone and on a Samsung S20 that you need 16 and 30? No, you're not doing everything. That's
I'm doing everything.
Most people are taking pictures of cats. And when's the last time you edited a video?
I can have a terabyte of cat pictures on my phone.
But you don't, though. You don't. You
might.
Bump it off to the nobody uses that stuff, but we just keep pumping them in the air. And I'm like, why are we doing that? Because you got to sell it. And it's just so annoying because why? And greed, and we got to do it. Anyway, I'm sorry for complaining. But we don't need this, man. We don't need it.
All right.
I just need to tweet and text and videotape my kid sliding on a skateboard or something. I don't know.
Back to that flip phone again. There you go.
There we go.
I should have bought. I should have bought the Z Flip. I'm killing myself.
You need that battery power for your go bag, though. So true. You gotta have that.
True.